Episode 11 is a listener question sent to us by one of you guys. You've heard and we've listened. And now we're going to read one of your questions and go through what our best thoughts are, the ways and strategies that we would teach our members and our clients on how to get over this. And this one is pretty good. This one is goals. When is it okay to let go? And when are you just being weak? For example, signing up for a 10K marathon, whatever, but you are feeling really overwhelmed or negative towards that specific goal. When do you do it and when do you drop out? So lots to unpack here. Here's your phone back, Michael. You can have this one. Lots to unpack here as far as what's to go, but we have summarized this in when to persevere. So what was that? What was our thing?
When to persevere and when to pivot.
Pivot. That's the word I was looking for.
Because we're not big on giving up altogether.
Yes.
I feel like you need to. Honoring your own word is a big part of this. So if you say you're going to do something, actually following through and then building that integrity by having those little wins. Like I said, I was going to get up early tomorrow. I got up. Kind of builds on that. So the biggest thing is you don't want to lie to yourself. So I'm always trying to get clients to pivot rather than just stop.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many situations where just simply by persevering, you might find, like, whether it's a plateau, whether you've been injured, whether life has changed, maybe you're expecting a child, or maybe you're not getting as much sleep as you used to, you got a new job, so many different circumstances that could cause you to have a reason to stop doing what you're doing. But merely, like Michael said, by pivoting, maybe being less serious with that certain subject. We can even use one of our members at the gym, Jules. She's gone from doing like CrossFit classes and being really focused on that to Olympic weightlifting. So even though it's still an element of CrossFit, she's pivoted to focusing specifically on the speciality of weightlifting and improving that. So she's not completely out of the gym. She still comes the same amount of time she comes, but that is her main focus.
Yeah, and to give you a bit of context, she came in yesterday and the conversation that we had was, okay, this week's been a bit of a shit show. I struggled with motivation, things like that. But she still came in. She still did some stuff, 1 session a week. It's not like she's going, I missed a week. Everything's derailed. I'm done with weightlifting now. Like, she's just gone, okay, it's just one of those weeks.
Yeah, and that's the conversation I end up having time and time again with clients, where it's like, they look at some of the other members going to the gym and they're like doing really well. They're crushing PRs. They're posting awesome lifts. You're like, wow, like this guy is killing it. Like they get the steroid accusations, those type of people. And then you're that person who then's like, wow, I'm going to use that motivation, come to the gym. Bad session. Like missed my squats, missed my top set. Like maybe it didn't do very well at the workout that I expected. But it's just like, you can't compare yourself to others who have different circumstances to you. You might be a mother of 3 and they might be a single 21-year-old who's got all the time in the world to train, eat and sleep. So it's like there's a lot of elements there outside of just the gym that people aren't considering. But also, it just might be a bad week. We all tend to have them. Those off weeks that just don't feel well. You're not hitting everything like you do. Maybe you just don't feel as good. Maybe you're even carrying a little bit of an injury. And that's where, like, that is where your mindset and can get a little bit worse each time. I think one of the things I said in a previous video, not a podcast, it was actually one of the videos I made about building muscle, was competency is actually one of the biggest drivers of motivation. When you hit lifts, when things feel good, when you hit that 3RM that you've been chasing for a while, that's when you're more likely being motivated, rather than going on Instagram and being like, wow, the world record snatch hold, I did a 225 snatch at 12 kilos body weight. Can't wait for my turn. It's just not going to happen.
It's perspective, yeah. It's something that most people lack. We talk about it all the time. 80% of training is going to be shit sessions. It's going to be
average, yeah.
It's going to suck. Like, it's not going to be great. And then you're going to find, like, let's just give it a number. 1 in every 7 days, you have a session where things are banging.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever, you just can't do anything wrong. But they're very few and far between, and being realistic with that, understanding that, okay, most of my training sessions, it's going to be hard. It's going to be, shit, I'm tight here. This feels a bit niggly. I'm not super open. But it doesn't mean you don't do the thing. Like, there's a concept that I always draw back to, and that's hard work always negates talent, because we like to talk about, oh, they're super talented. That's why they're so good. But there is part of the equation that's kind of missing, because it's hard work over time will always negate talent. Like we see, especially with a lot of the young kids that we work with, like I do a lot of athletic performance with young kids. And like, if you can combine talent and hard work, then yes, you're going to see cool outcomes. But the amount of times where it's like, we all think back to our sporting careers and we think about, like, we all played with someone who was like extremely talented, could just turn up and do everything, and you were like, shit, I want to be like that person. But then what happened? They all got lazy. Right? And the guys who make it were just the ones who worked hard and did it for a long period of time.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of different things you can break off even that one point, where like the first one is generally, like, this is rugby league more specifically, they actually find on average the second grade players that end up just being more consistent over a long period of times are the ones that make it to the higher level and perform better, because they didn't come from an opportunity, like you said, of like being genetically gifted or being super talented at the sport, maybe being like genetically bigger. Like, you know, you got those big front rowers who just steamroll everyone in rugby, you know, from under 12s onwards. And you're like, I can never tackle this guy. He's got 100 tries in a year. And then like when everyone starts to get bigger, obviously he's not going to be as talented, or he's going to struggle a little bit more. But it's like on the other side of things too, I believe that there was like a tennis study done with all the top performing tennis players in the world. And they measured two things. One was passion and the other one was talent. And the ones who were the most successful were the ones who had both. So even if you were talented, you needed to enjoy what you were doing for you to be fully successful over a long period of time, which I guess leads back to our main question.
And you can learn talent. Like, I think
you can.
It's not like you're born with it. Like, a lot of time, like, you might have things that you're just a little bit more suited to, but you can learn skills. Like, it's still a skill. So if you just break it down as a behavior, it's like you look at the guys in the NBA, and it's like a lot of the guys who are like, you look at your Michael Jordans and things like that, like, they just outworked everyone from a young age.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, they're so talented, they're so gifted, because you just see the highlight reel and the end result. And I think obviously social media heightens that for everyone now, where, like we said, like, no one posts all their fails. No one posts the process. Everyone just posts the outcome.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for us to be like, to sit with a nice, good perspective and a balanced overview of reality, and then make our decisions based on that. So it does require us to have conversations like this, where you go to someone who has an outside view of what you're doing and can be a little bit more objective and be like, okay, look, that is reality. Reality is most sessions are going to be hard because you have all these other variables, but that doesn't mean you stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And you draw back on those good sessions, because you know, like for me, I'm always like, okay, every bad session I have, they're stacking. I'm one session closer to having a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
It's coming.
So, yeah, I just reframe it. I'm like, fuck. I've had like 2 weeks of shit ass training. Tyler's fucking whooping me in his workouts, and all he does is powerlifting. But I'm like, I'm only one workout, like, I'm one workout away from having that good session again, and then I can draw back on that and hold that as motivation for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and like I said, it comes back to that competence and being compliant with what you're trying to do. So when you do have that good session, that's a reassurance of like, oh, what I am doing is actually working towards this overarching goal. I would say, like, using myself as an example, here's a very specific example of long-term perseverance and why it is important just to not let your own poor performances get you down. 220 squat has been, for me, funnily enough, it was a lifetime goal for before I turned 30. So I wanted to get it before I turned 30. Got it last year in June. Awesome. I had an opportunity at the start of the year. I went to another gym to visit one of my clients, and a bunch of us went down to make him feel welcome because he just moved away. My goal was to do 220 for 3. So it was amazing. Like, oh my God, what I used to have for 1, I was trying to do for 3. And I got it. The motivation, the environment was huge. We're at a new gym. Everything was fancy and nice. It was awesome. And I was like, wow, I'm improving so much. I can't wait to see what else I can do. Fast forward maybe 3 months, I had tried 220 for 3 nearly maybe once a fortnight for the last 3 months, and I had always failed the 3rd rep. I tried it and failed, missed. Some days I didn't even get the 1st rep. I failed the 1st rep on one of my sets, and I was like, fucking hell, I'm weaker than I've ever been. Like, I'm not as good as I used to be. My squats are going downhill. Like, that's the mindset I could have had. But I kept thinking, like, I remember that I had gotten it before. So I was like, I want it again. Funnily enough, Michael was actually there for it. It was on Monday. I just was amped, or Tuesday or whatever it was, amped up. I had a lot more adrenaline. I had 2 days off. So some of my circumstances are a little bit better, but the goal was still the same. And when I ended up getting it, I watched the video and compared it to the first time. And I was like, wow, I was way better this time than I was the previous. And like I said, like, not all the other sessions on the way were the same. Like, I tried it and I felt good, but just didn't happen. Maybe I wasn't in the right mindset. Maybe I wasn't, I wasn't in the right groove, or maybe I messed my technique up slightly. All the excuses in the world, doesn't matter. The reality was I probably tried it 6 times post the first time doing it and failed. But but it didn't let me stop trying to go for that goal of getting it again to make sure it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't just one of those freak days like where you're just on everything. And I was like, wow, I could get it on a day that I actually didn't feel as good. And I had way less motivation and environmental factors than I did the previous.
Yeah, and it's a huge takeaway for individuals. Like the one thing you did there is you just kept trying. Like the story that you get to control the story you tell.
Yeah.
So like if you think about, okay, let's just fast forward, you're 40 and you're looking back, it's like you have the opportunity to write your own story. But I think most people just they give up and they close the chapter and they accept it. Like you don't have to accept it. Like time is on your side. We don't need to be like, oh, this had to be done in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We look at most people that run a successful business or who make a lot of money now, they all failed. Like again and again and again. And the only thing that they did consistently was they just kept trying.
Yeah.
And training's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like the moment you sit there and you're like, oh, I'm not motivated, I'm just going to stop. That's when you lose.
Yeah. And that's definitely that's when the person who is competing against you is having the upper hand, because they're not letting that be the reason that they quit. They're making sure that doesn't matter if I'm not doing well, my goal is still the same. I want to get to X, Y, Z. I want to do, this, I want to do that. And doing this now, even though shitty, even though not feeling good, is still going to get me closer to that point than doing nothing.
And that's that perseverance you talk about. And I suppose the pivot is something that we can touch on a little bit more, because we're talking very heavily on the perseverance side of things. But when do you pivot? And I think when you pivot a lot of the times, it might be when, for me, it's when intent tends to lack. So like you still had intent with everything you were doing. You didn't necessarily need to be motivated, but you had a goal, you had something in mind that you wanted, and you were just going to work towards that. When the intent starts to drop off and you start just going through the motions, there's a comment that riles me up every time. If anyone ever wants to piss me off, come in and say, oh, I just want to move. I don't want to think about it. Like, I just want to mindlessly train. And it's like, for fuck's sake, because for most people, they're mindlessly scrolling, or like they're always doing mindless things. And it's like, this is the one time where you actually should tune in, should be present, have some intent, understand what you're doing, like pay attention to the feedback loops that you're getting. And then that way you can influence outcomes.
Yeah.
And then that pivot for me will be there, and it tends to coincide with injuries and niggles and things like that. So you might find, okay, I need to just bring them back from those hard squat movements, like working heavy all the time, just beating them up. They've got a lot of external stresses. Maybe they're just not sleeping, work, there's a lot of pressure, financial pressure coming into end of financial year. You might move them back to box squats. You might move them onto sleds. So still like strength orientated or focused movements, but movements that aren't going to beat them up as much.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, a key point to highlight when this was actually for the next podcast. So I'm going to save most of this information till then. But I have this catchphrase that I say to my athletes, which is the TIA, which is I call it the Tia, right? And if we all know Tia Claire Toomey, right? She's like one of the best, right? So it's thought, intention, action. And what you're saying with the people who come in and just want to move, they just want to do the action portion without any thought or intention into their training. And that's really dangerous, because when we look at improvement and trying to reach a goal or trying to get better, I look at some people in previous gyms I used to work at, and what I see is the same people in the same position 6 to 8 years later, and they're just content with being the same. And nothing gets me more upset than looking at someone who hasn't moved in 6 to 8 years and they're happy with that. And I'm like, look, people are more than welcome to be happy doing whatever they want. They can do whatever they want with their life. But I'm like, in my head, as someone who loves improvement and is like a very goal-orientated person, I couldn't stand being in the same spot 6 to 8 years later unless there was a genuine reason, like you said, injury, or like there's other factors I'm looking at. But from most point of views, there's always some way you can improve. Like, God, I have a client, and most of you guys probably met it from Unbound. His name's Blair, and he definitely has the short straw. He has so many external injuries that there's very little he can do, to the point where I actually said, like, he still does the class on a Tuesday, but we modify everything because he physically can't do it. But that's okay. He likes the social aspect of it and joining in. I get him to do his own little thing alongside everyone else, and he loves it. But what he can do is deadlift, and he is obsessed with deadlifting. And it's not because it's necessarily like the sexiest or coolest movement. For him, it's because he can do it, and it's something he can work towards, and he's seeing the progression, and that's the confidence that he's seeing. But he had to pivot because he used to do CrossFit, but it was just too painful on his knees. His shoulders were hurting. It was just an uncomfortable experience. And even if I relate it to myself, that's why I've had to really pull back from a lot of the functional fitness stuff, because my injuries have restricted me from doing what I'm able to or what I want to do without being super uncomfortable or in pain. And it's like, that's when you say like, hey, that's when you got to pull back on certain things, and knowing that like, if you're always in pain, that's not a good thing. Like, you're not tough. You're not David Goggins wrapping your shins and running with broken legs. Like, that's eventually going to bite you in the ass. And the older you are, sadly, the more it's going to affect you, because the recovery time is slower and the implications of the injury are just much higher.
And we're not saying don't push yourself. Like, you need to improve things, and you will find things will break. That's part of how it works. Like, easy doesn't exist. So the concept of trying to create easy or find easy is just wrong. It's a fallacy. Like, even having financial freedom, there's responsibility that comes with that. So same thing, like getting to the point of high level athletic performance, there's going to be a level of responsibility and stress that comes with that. But what we're saying is, when these things do start to break, there's always going to be signs. Like, it's very, very rare and very unlucky, like, situations where it is very sudden. So it's not necessarily going to be like a random car crash for us in the gym. It's a very controlled environment. Yeah. There will be niggles. You'll find there'll be tightness starting to be generated through the hamstrings over time. You're like, oh, I'm a little bit stiffer than normal. Oh, this. And you can pay attention to those things. Give it a little bit of, we talk about training intent. That's what we mean. Give it some attention. Give it some TLC. And you'll find then you can stay on top of it. So we're not saying don't push yourself. We're just saying when things do start to feel a little bit funny, then try and work on them. If you don't know how to work on them, then that's where you reach out to someone who has the expertise who can help you.
Yeah, lucky we're blessed. We are attached to a physio clinic with some very, very smart individuals. And I always recommend the guys here, I'm like, 2 weeks is the maximum you should deal with something with no improvement. You've done, like Michael said, some TLC, maybe like your wrists are really sore and they hurt during everything. Cool, you've done some mobility primers, you've done some strengthening exercises, you've moved them in good ranges, maybe you've given them a rest for a couple of days from some of those movements. You come back after 2 weeks, it's the same or even worse level of pain. Please just see someone. Like, the amount of times I've had a client or an athlete who's been in the same pain threshold of the same thing for 6 months, and it's a 2-week fix at the physiotherapist, it just baffles me. Where it's like, and that the same applies to when you already go to a specialist and you're not seeing results after a short period of time. You've gone once a week for 4 weeks and there's no change. It's like, go to someone else. It's obvious they obviously aren't finding the problem. They don't have enough expertise in the area. Like, that's what I mean. Like, you wouldn't let a builder build your house and then it still like falls down at the end of it. And you're like, oh, well, he did a good job. I'm just going to keep using that guy. Like, no, go to someone else. Like, use a better professional. And we have recommendations, of course. Of course, we recommend those guys. And the main reason it's not because they're attached or we get free money from them.
Yeah, we get no kickbacks.
But it's because they do what we teach. So because they do what we teach, it's more likely that they're going to adjust and adapt it in a way that's going to keep you getting your goals achieved.
And it's a relationship. It gives us feedback that we can iterate programming on. We also see you more than they see you. So they might get you for half an hour. We get to see you for 5 hours a week in all the classes.
Yeah.
There is a rule that I run with my clients, and it's like, when these things happen, if it makes you feel anxious, then I always say to them, I'm like, just pick something. The reason you feel anxious is because you probably have 30 things in your mind that you know you could be doing, and you just don't know where to start. So It makes you feel anxious. Just pick something, run it for 2 weeks, even if it's the same goddamn thing every day, and just see what happens. Worst case, it didn't work. So now you've only got 29 things you can start working through. And then it's like, if it makes you feel sad, that's where you have to reach out. Yeah. So if I have a client where they're like, okay, I'm feeling depressed, this is really killing me, I'm feeling lost, it's because they don't know what to do. They don't have any options. And a lot of the time it's get educated. So that's where you reach out to someone who has that education level, and then they'll inform you on those things and where to go next.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to leave the podcast on. So hopefully for the lovely person who sent us the question, that answers your question in detail. If you do have any questions and you want to make sure they're answered on the podcast, just reach out to us, Unbound Athletic Instagram, send us your questions through, or you can message us personally and we'll chuck it on one of the next episodes.
Or just message Izzy. She's probably the fastest replier.
Yeah, I'm never on my phone, so you'll get one message a day at most. Cool.